Hello from wherever you are, and welcome to Let's Play Games. I'm John McFarland, Adult Services Librarian for National Public Libraries, and I hope you'll join me in learning or rediscovering some of the more common and uncommon games out there. This time, we're going to go into a new experience with playing cards. You're probably familiar with Ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, onward all the way up to King. Well, what if I told you there's different types of decks that completely do away with certain cards? It's time to tell you about eights and Mau Mau. Let's get stuck in. The game I'm going to talk about today, eights, is on what we call a French style card deck. And if you're not familiar with what that means, you've probably seen it before. This is the traditional 4 suits of, try and squeeze this all in, Ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Jack, Queen, and King, these quirk cards. So from here, there are numerous games. We've talked in previous episodes about the wide array of games that you can play with just this deck of cards. But this one is probably going to seem familiar if you've ever played the game of Uno, because eights came first. Uno is a proprietary card game, but you can basically play it without an Uno deck. So we have our 52 cards here in the suits of clubs, diamonds, spades, and hearts. One thing I'm always going to emphasize is you're going to shuffle. Shuffling is the most important part of preparing for any game. So you're going to do what's called cutting the deck, and that just means dividing it at any point you choose. And if you've never seen it before, what you're going to do is you're going to take this between your hands, and you can put them close together, and you're going to put a little bit of pressure on this corner that's closest to you, and you're just going to slowly let it through. Sometimes they'll get stuck, but that's usually when you can just back up and do it again. So you just hold it back, feel that little pressure, so that this way you have an accurately shuffled deck. There's ideas as to how many times you need to shuffle. I like shuffling 7 times. Saw a study maybe 2 years ago that said that 7 is technically the optimal shuffling number, because it is at that point you reach the maximum amount of randomness that you're going to achieve. Unless you're doing card tricks, then that's a whole other topic entirely. So for eights, there's a couple different ways you're going to play this. I'm going to play this with 5 players. And we're going to do a version of this which is called Countdown. The way the Countdown eights works is that each player is going to get 8 cards as their initial hand. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so that's 8 for 5 players. There's a stack in the middle, and I'm going to go ahead and fan these out to where you can see it. And what you're looking for are a couple of different things. So this is what's called a shedding type game. And the way that shedding usually works is you are trying to get rid of your entire hand. But in this instance, there are some cards that are going to be more helpful than others. This will start our little pile here, where you may inevitably have to draw cards. And we won't run out of cards here, just because the notion of shedding means that inevitably you are going to have a pile. So there are some cards that you really want to look out for. I'll go ahead and point them out here. If you're unfamiliar with the concept of Uno as a card game, they have some specialized cards where playing a particular card will cause you to draw 2. Playing a particular card will skip your next player's turn. Another one will reverse the direction. That concept already existed within 8s. So here are the cards you need to look out for. 8s, the name of our game, is your wild card. The way that you are going to shed these are you have to play either the number or the suit. So if a 9, we've got the 9 of clubs right there. 9 of clubs is played. The next player, we play counterclockwise. Or sorry, clockwise. Counterclockwise is for Eastern style games, I apologize. They play the 9 of clubs. The 10 of clubs is allowed to be played there. The 9 of diamonds, which will switch the suit, is able to be played. And then the ability for you to change doesn't exist there. And you would move on to the next player. Let's say that they played the diamond and they've got a diamond to play. So they can play that diamond, it goes to the next player. They do not have, well, they do have 1 diamond, but they do have 2 7s. Let's say if it's that 7 was played. So they can go on and on around. But for the queen, if the queen is played and it's on the same suit, it means that the next player is skipped. If it's a 2, the next player will draw 2. And it is stackable, so here's part of the fun. If you have a 2 and then you play another person with a 2, that next person is to draw 4. They play that, next person is to draw 6. So you can have up to a draw 8, which would be bad for certain players, but this is the way the game goes. The queen is also stackable where you can keep on skip, but you typically want to hold these cards in reserve for when you need them. Because if you are at the end of a draw 6, you want to have the ability, if at all possible, to play that draw 2 and force it. Now I'm playing with only 1 deck here for 5 players. You could actually play with 2 if you so chose in order to increase the randomness. But notice how even with 5 players, all you need is 1 deck. So we'll have this seat here be the dealer, and we're going to flip over this card. That is the 3 of spades, which means that you can either play as a part of your suit, or you can play as a part of a wild card, which can be of any suit. Right here, we've got this jack, so we're going to go ahead and do that. That will move play to our next player. They've got 7 there and the ace to reverse it. Let's say they want to go ahead and hit that reverse button. So in this case, it moves back to this player. Well, now they've got to make the choice. Do they want to change the suit and make it a club-only suit? Or do they want to start on the draw 2? Thereby leaving them with, if it goes back to spades, they're in some trouble and they may have to use that wild. So let's say they go ahead and use this 2. What everyone else is hoping, specifically this person right here at the end, is that this person does not have a 2. Well, they don't. So they're going to have to draw a 2. We'll add it to their deck. And they get to still play anyways. So they're going to go ahead and play this 9 right here. And sort of once you learn the kind of basic rules of this game, one thing you want to look out for is working through and seeing what cards haven't been played. Because that can help you decide where you want to go next, especially if you know that there's 14 spade cards, 4 of them have already been played. That can really help you make some certain decisions. So it goes to this person, they've got a queen, they're going to go and play it. That is going to skip this player, move it to them, so they can play either a spade or another queen. Let's have them play that spade right there. They don't have a 7. They don't have a spade. Now, their option is It depends on what you agree on. Either draw 1 and you miss your turn, or draw infinite until you can play something. Because we've got such a small deck, and they don't want to play their wild card yet. I wouldn't want to either with this many cards. They're going to draw, and they're going to lose their turn. Advances to the next player, who can play. So they're going to go ahead and play their 7 of hearts. They are going to then... they've got an ace here, so they're going to reverse the flow. Moves back to this player. So this is how you can go multi-directional. Got a 6 to play here. They've got a 6 to play. Notice how these rounds can move quickly. So you've got the queen here, which skips this person. They've got a queen here, which skips this person, moving here. They've got a queen here. Cards can come out pretty quick, which skips this person, which moves them here. Now we are back to clubs. And then we're going to have our nice little draw 2. So notice they've been the recipient of not 1, but 2 draw 2s. But they can still play anyways. They've got the 6. Then we've got our 3. We've got a 5. They're starting to run out of options, so they're going to need to hope for a change, which they get through this player with the hearts. Switches back. Now they don't have any other cards they can play, so now they've really got no choice but to bring out the 8. They now get to pronounce what suit they want the game to be in. So they're going to say diamonds. So they're going to play the 2. Notice they could play that 8, but they want to hold that for when they need it. So they've got a 2 here as well. So now it's a draw 4 for this player. 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's get them a little more organized. They've got a jack here. They've got a heart. They can't play anything here, so draw 4. Can't play anything. They lose their turn. They can play a 9. They can play a 9. Back to diamonds. They've got option. They're going to play that jack. And at this point, this person can declare that they have the last card. Is at this point where you have to declare that you have the last card, or otherwise you will be forced to draw. Let's say they're able to do so, and they say that the suit is spades. At this point, everybody kind of knows who's left. So they have to play spade here. They're going to change it and say the heart. They've got a heart to play. They don't, so there's a draw. They managed to draw wild. So they're going to say that the suit is clubs here. So now you've reached the bottom of this deck. What are you going to do? Shuffle. Because it shouldn't be a game of memorizations to see who's played what. You want to add a little bit of chance and randomness to it. Apologies. So this person's still going to be forced to draw in the end. It is at this point that the person will probably have to be drawing a card. So we'll go ahead and have them draw. They can't play a club. Moves on to the next player. So I got a little bit of interesting story about card decks and their development throughout time. Let me tell you about that, and I'll come right back. In order to talk about the different types of card decks that we're going to be working with today, we have to go back to the development of cards. I need to take you all the way back. It comes from ancient China, in which they started dealing with, through some limited paper, basically the game of coins, the game of money, in which they had coins, strings, and myriads. They were basically scales upon itself. So the 10 didn't really exist. It was 1 through 9, then 1 through 9, then 1 through 9. And you saw this with tile-based games like Mahjong that spread to other locations. but these were printed on simple paper and it spread quickly. But more on that in just a moment. So last we left off, we had the draw here after they had last card. The suit is clubs. We just shuffled the deck. So this is where now you've got this element of chance. And clubs, so that ace, remember, is a reverse. They don't have a card to play. They draw a 9 of clubs, so they get lucky. This person also gets lucky by changing it to hearts and declares last card before they are forced to draw. This person doesn't have a heart again. They draw, they're a bit out of luck. They draw, they're also a bit out of luck. They're back to hearts. They're going to go ahead and play a heart here. And they played a 4. They could have played the king to try and draw into that, but this person now gets to go out. So how is this game even accounted for who wins, especially for a game like Countdown? There's 2 ways to do this. One, with the Countdown rules, I'm going to reshuffle the deck, and that is going to be done in a slightly different way. If you want to count it by points, it's actually really easy to follow. If you have an 8 in your hand, it's 50 points. You do not want to be left with an 8. If you have a court card, that's either the jack, king, queen, or 10, that's worth 10 points each. The other cards are worth their face value. So real quick, adding up points, that is 25. That's 30, so 55, 63, and then 11, 14, 20. So 83 points would go to the person who won the hand. Typically, I've seen with 2 players, you go to 100 points and you add 50 points for each player. That way, you've got a clear end to the game, incentive to put away your highest card counts quickly. So typically, you'd want to play that king because you don't want to be caught out with 10 points when you could have been only caught out with 4. This is where it adds up. So with 5 players, that's 250 points. This person would now have 82. So at this point, what you do is you put everything together again, and you are going to shuffle. Again, shuffling is one of the most important parts here. You can do as many times as you like, but you have to do at least a couple. I like doing the 7 when possible. But since we once we shuffled a little bit earlier, that did mean that we have a little bit already randomized. But you want to make sure, especially if somebody likes keeping their cards organized by suit or by particular number, that you properly get it involved. So I'm going to deal again, but with Countdown, we're going to do a slightly different way. Let's see if you can notice what it is. All right, can you see what I did? What you missed, possibly, is that this player, they won the hand. They didn't get 8 cards. They got 7. Here is the twist of Countdown, which I particularly like. At this point, 8s are no longer wild for that player. The 7 is. So the number of cards are rather important for how quickly your game is going to end. So you can either do a countdown where you're just going to see who gets out first, or you can do simply by points up to a certain number of points. I actually like combining those rules. See who goes out and then how many points they have when they go out. So that way you add a little bit of a chance of some interesting play going on. it makes for more competitive, but you can play it however you want. And at this point, the person who won the hand would probably be the person who would end up dealing, or you can rotate it. So from this point, that person would be first. They could actually, if it was the club suit, safely play that 8, and it's not a wild for them, it's a wild for everyone else. So that adds a nice little bit of strategy to it. One second, I want to talk about a different style of card deck before we get into this other game. Similar rules, slight twist. One second. As cards started moving from China through the Middle East, you saw them add what we now know as some of the rudimentary court cards, in which they had the Shah, which is kind of the equivalent of the king, and the Vizier, which was eventually kind of evolved into the Jack. You see it also within chess pieces that the Shah was the sort of king piece, and the Vizier, the bishop, before the queen became the most important piece in chess, became one of the more important cards involved within the deck. But its development continues as you go from the Middle East through Turkey into Europe. This is where we talk about the German card deck. We're familiar with the French, the 52 card deck. The German was the easiest to print on a single block of paper when wasn't exactly very many options when it came to replicating card decks. So this is where you started seeing a 40 block, just 10 of 4 suits, and that way you could at least get through most of a traditional card suit within its own games. Why is that important? Well, it's time we talk about Mau Mau. So, what's a German deck? Let's talk about it real quick. So I've got this here where certain cards have been effectively removed. The 7, the 8, the 9, the 10, the Jack, the Queen, the King, and the Ace. This is a abbreviated way to use the French deck in order to replicate a German one. Now, we're going to continue with the 5 players, but there's some nuance to this for this game called Mau Mau. Mau Mau, the Germanic version, treats the Jack as the wild card. It treats the 7 as a draw 2. And it also treats the 8 as a skip card. There's no reverse, so it's going the same direction each time. And since there's 5 players and it's a limited number, you actually are allowed to use more than one deck. So, I forgot to talk about the Ace real quick. The Ace is a special card that's not done too often in many other types of games. It's a bonus card. And because it's a bonus card, it actually needs to be played with another card. The catch: it can't be your last card. So if you have 2 aces, you can't just drop 2 aces. You have to play it with something else. And much like last card, Uno, 8s, however you want to play it, instead of saying I have last card or Uno, you say Mau. But if you have a Jack, last card is a wild card, you actually have to say Mau Mau. And your point total is doubled. We will get to points in just a moment. One more shuffle just for good measure. So for this one, you're actually going to need to deal cards to a player in particular. It's typically the person to your left. You're going to ask them to cut the deck. And by this, you're going to put in front of them. They're going to cut. And then they're going to take 4 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is where the cards I talked about earlier come into play. So we have ourselves the Jack, Queen, King, and 9. One of these cards at minimum has to be one of those what we call power cards. there's a jack here. They keep it. If all 4 of these cards were those power cards, you'd actually have to put it back in, make them reshuffle, cut the deck again. So they start off with 4 cards, and you can do anywhere between 5 to 7 cards here. So I'll shuffle it one more time for good measure now that we know what some of the cards are. And it functions in a very similar way. So I'll go ahead and deal here. Reminder that they would have kept those 4 cards, so they would have just gotten that last card. Then we'll bring it up here. So now we've got our cards here. So now there's a slight point differential. The Jack as our wild, that is worth 30 points. The 10, the Queen, and the King are worth 10 points. And the 7, the 8, and the 9 are worth their face value points. So it's still a lot of points no matter what. And you typically actually play individual hands. At the end, it determines the ranking. So whoever went out is the person with 0 points, and then it's who had how much left. So you want to have as few points in your hand as possible. You can also use this to quickly adapt and play to whatever point total you like. You can also play a countdown version of this. So as a reminder, the Jack is your wild card. Your 7 is your draw 2. The 8 is your skip, and the ace is your bonus card. So if I'm looking at these, I'm liking this hand right here from the get-go, because you can go out pretty quickly based on that Jack, but it's the same suit rules apply, same number rule apply, same wild card applies. But this is a simplistic version, basically the same game. So you can make it to where even this type of game will work well as long as you have multiple card decks and can combine them. This is why you can always end up making your own card games based on what you have. But I wanted to show this version to you so you could see how even different types of card decks still end up having the same kind of games. This is 8s with a German card deck and only slight differential. But if you know how to play 8s, you know how to play probably most all other shedding type games with some slight rule changes. We have the French, we have the German card decks, which we've now talked about. And here we also have, there's an Italian card deck, which uses a slight different combination and different suits, actually. It'll use like knave suits and stick suits. You actually see a lot of crossover between that and Jeu de Tarot, which saw the popularity of tarot cards as a playing card game, and it's still one of the most played card games in France. So you saw a wide array of different card decks, different styles of card decks, but the French one still remains one of the most popular ones to this day. Still wanted to talk about the German deck so you can see how different combinations can lead to different games. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to check out some of our great other NPL Universe content out there. There's cooking classes, there's technology classes, there's story times from our foundation. There's so much to explore. I'll see you next time.